In the late 1980s, the world of programming stood at a crossroads. Computers were becoming faster, more capable, and more essential than ever before. Yet the languages used to control them were often clunky, rigid, and unforgiving. Programmers were stuck between low-level efficiency and high-level complexity. Writing code felt like building a machine with rusty tools. But then, in the midst of this tension, a single programmer began shaping an idea that would change not only how people coded, but how they thought about programming itself. His name was Guido van Rossum, and his creation would become one of the most powerful and beloved programming languages in history, Python. This is the story of how Python was invented, why it exists, and how it came to dominate the modern world of code. But before we step into the story of Guido van Rossum, let us imagine for a moment, what if Python had never been invented? Picture a world where programming remained locked in the struggle between languages that were either too verbose or too cryptic. Web development might have stayed fragmented, dominated only by Java and Perl. Artificial intelligence might have been delayed, hindered by the lack of a clean, readable language that scientists could easily adopt. Data science, machine learning, automation, entire industries might look very different today. Without Python, the very rhythm of technology could have slowed. So why Python? Why then? Why Guido? The story begins in Amsterdam at the Centrum Wiskunde en Informatica, a Dutch research institute. It was the late 1980s, and Guido van Rossum was working with a language called ABC. ABC was designed for teaching programming, simple and elegant, yet it was limited. It wasn't suitable for real-world projects, and it lacked flexibility. Guido admired its clarity but felt its constraints. He wanted more. Over Christmas in 1989, he began tinkering on a side project. The institute was closed for the holidays. The halls were silent, but Guido carried with him a vision: to build a language that combined the clarity of ABC with the power and practicality needed for real work. A language that was readable, approachable, and forgiving, but also expandable, connecting seamlessly with C and Unix systems. And so, Python was born. But why the name Python? Surprisingly, it wasn't inspired by snakes. Guido was a fan of the British comedy group Monty Python. He wanted his language to reflect that spirit, approachable, a little playful, and never weighed down by unnecessary seriousness. Python, unlike most programming languages, was designed with a philosophy of readability, simplicity, and fun. Python's guiding principles would later be captured in a document called The Zen of Python, which emphasized beauty, simplicity, and explicitness. It wasn't just a language. It was a philosophy. Python's early features reflected that vision. Indentation was enforced, not optional, forcing programmers to write code that was automatically clean and structured. The syntax was minimalistic, reducing noise and boilerplate. Its standard library was vast, like a toolbox filled with ready-made parts, empowering developers to build faster. At first, Python was a curiosity, known mainly in academic and research circles. But slowly, steadily, its influence grew. It became the bridge between two worlds, a language simple enough for beginners to learn as their first step into coding, and powerful enough for professionals to use in complex, real-world systems. Now imagine again our alternate world, a world without Python. In this reality, scripting tasks would likely have remained the domain of Perl or Bash, languages powerful but messy and less accessible. Web development might have leaned even more heavily toward Java, creating a world where beginners struggled with complexity from day one. The explosion of machine learning in the 2010s might have been delayed, or led by languages like R or C++, accessible mainly to specialists and mathematicians, rather than the wider community of developers. Without Python, the democratization of coding, the ability for artists, scientists, students, and everyday problem solvers to pick up programming might never have spread so widely. Python wasn't just a tool. It was an invitation. In reality, Python's rise was not immediate. During the 1990s, it competed with Perl, TCL, and Ruby. Yet slowly, the advantages of its readability and its ever-growing ecosystem began to shine through. By the early 2000s, Python was being used by major companies like Google. Its design made it a natural choice for rapid prototyping, automation, and system integration. Then came the explosion of data. As the internet expanded and the world began generating mountains of information, Python stood ready. Libraries like NumPy, Pandas, and Matplotlib turned it into the backbone of data science. When machine learning emerged, frameworks like TensorFlow and PyTorch cemented Python as the language of AI. Suddenly, Python wasn't just another option. It was the default. But the reason it worked so well in these fields wasn't just timing or luck. It was the original vision of Guido van Rossum. Python was designed to be clear, accessible, and flexible. It was never about raw performance. It was about human performance. About making programming less of a battle against the machine, and more of a conversation with it. Think of the cascading effects. If Python had not existed, students might have found programming too difficult, turning away from computer science entirely. Entire industries might have relied more heavily on specialists fluent in lower-level languages. The barrier to entry would have been higher. Innovation would have slowed, but because of Python, millions of people who might never have called themselves programmers were able to step into coding. Scientists, analysts, designers, even kids learning with tools like Raspberry Pi. It made programming human again. Python's story is also one of philosophy. Guido van Rossum became known as the benevolent dictator for life, a lighthearted title reflecting his leadership of the Python community. For decades, he guided its development not through force, but through vision, collaboration, and care for the community. In 2018, Guido stepped down, but his influence remains woven into the very DNA of the language. Today, Python powers websites, runs servers, analyzes genomes, drives AI, and automates everyday tasks. It is a language used by some of the biggest tech giants in the world, Google, Facebook, Netflix, and by children writing their first programs. Few languages in history have managed to bridge so many worlds. The invention of Python wasn't just about solving a technical problem. It was about redefining the relationship between humans and code. And so we return to the question, who invented Python and why? The answer lies not only in Guido van Rossum's decision to build a new language in 1989, but in his motivation. He wanted to make programming easier, more natural, more human. He believed that code should serve people, not intimidate them. That philosophy didn't just create Python, it reshaped the culture of programming. As we reflect on the world Python has created, we're left with a powerful lesson. The tools we build shape not only the machines we use, but the possibilities we dare to imagine. So the next time you write a line of Python code, whether it's a simple script or a complex AI model, remember that it all began with one programmer, a holiday project, and a vision of a friendlier, more readable future. And it leads us to another question, one we'll explore next time. What if open source itself had never existed?